Adventuring Party for the 3rd week of October 2020. This week we finish out round 2 of our attempt to find the greatest RPG of all time. The Adventuring Party, discussing tabletop and video gaming the Irish way. Welcome to the party. I'm Shane, also known as Scarr by some reason.
It's the way I'll think of you when you're gone. I'm Savage Mick.
I'm Graham.
And I'm the other Shane.
Hooray! More than one. We'll sweep this whole contest together.
An heir and a spare. It's the way it should be.
Do you ever get people quoting that cowboy film at you, by the way? Shane.
Which cowboy film?
Shane.
Oh yeah,
Wait a minute. Who's on first?
This comedy gold.
I feel like that could have gone for a good 5 minutes.
Yes. So, such definite comedy gold requires a little bit of lubrication to get working down. So I am going to pop this can of Copperberg brand strawberry and lime gin and lemonade.
Okay.
Suit you, madam.
I mean, an old man's drink, really. I will stick. I'll stick to the hipster stuff. An old Guinness Stout is my tipple this evening. There we go. Try not to get that all over the keyboard. Name of my sex tape.
Okay.
I've got a bottle of port that I found in my cupboard, and I'm not sure if it's a fancy one and was a gift, and I've just totally forgotten where it came from. And maybe I was saving it for a special occasion, but a special occasion ain't getting it now.
Okay.
I've left my drink in the other room. Give me 2 seconds.
Off you go. Yep. Not a bother. He's just gone to the bar. Lemonade. Hold on. Sorry, Evil Robot Shane. I didn't catch that. What is it a bottle of?
Port.
Oh, good. Oh, well, this has all the ingredients of a rip-roaring episode.
I'm sorry.
Also, we're addressing again, actually. Coincidentally.
However, I have returned with alcohol. That's the good news.
Good.
What are you going to fuel the fires of debate with this evening, Black or Graham?
Whiskey. Jameson, specifically.
Nice.
I will also be drinking it out of the skulls of my defeated enemies.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So, what have you brought us here for, Scarr, if not to drink?
Well, mostly to drink, but also to, once again, get people together to decide the greatest RPGs of all time.
Oh, not another one of these, really?
Oh, yes!
Only,
time to really do some damage.
So far, only one of our long-term and loyal listeners has written a 5-page screed condemning us to hell for this. So, as far as I say, this is a valid episode topic, and we should keep continuing them until the sun burns out.
I thought we only had one long-term listener.
It's not really keeping with the idiom, though, is it? I mean, it's the one topic that we can't end the episode with just, talk amongst your group and decide what you think, because that's not how this works.
That's great. I don't think I've ever been mentioned in a manifesto before. I'm feeling very special now. Okay, so we are deep in the weeds now. We've had the first round of all of this, haven't we? We've had 4 of the first. How does this work?
Okay.
Remind me.
So each time we take. We started with a list of 64 of the most played and most popular RPGs, as based on a mixture of us being idiots and Roll20 being data-driven idiots. And we take them, pair them off randomly. Well, it was random at the start. It sort of settled down into inevitability thanks to the bracket system. And each round, the people who are present, which always varies because consistency is for other people, they debate the merits and flaws of both sides, and then we decide amongst ourselves which of the two is the best, and we will repeat this down through the whole listing of pairings till we get to the objectively best RPG ever.
Yeah, this is the best terrible idea I've been involved in all day.
Now, there's a bit of a twist this time, isn't there?
Yes, this time we are going to separate out the talking for 5 minutes about absolute nonsense, and the voting part. So each of us in turn is going to express our opinions of the two games involved. But the actual comparison will be done through the magic of, we have a Discord channel open. We will all simultaneously post our votes there, announce the results to you, the listeners who for some reason are not on our Discord. And then, that sort of cuts out the whole, the first two people to say, decide on one thing, so I'm going to be contrary nonsense goblin and just vote against them to show how cool and original I am. So this is going to be a focus instead on our actual thoughts on each of the games, as opposed to the comparison will come at the end.
Well, I mean, we are still deciding one is better than the other because of reasons. But
Yes.
Just in the interest of keeping a little suspense between ourselves and for our listeners, because there's four of us as well, we might still have to rely on the dreaded dice to make a decision. So who's got a decision-making dice to hand?
I got four of them. They got pluses and blanks and minuses. You'll love them.
Yes, but the most common result on those is nothing happens.
Yeah. Like in a proper roleplay game. It's okay, I can roll them again.
Graham, got a D6 on you? Or a coin?
Yeah. I have about, 100 dice in a glass or a crystal thing beside me. We're good. I got you sorted.
Roll your entire dice of glass and see if it comes up mostly odds or mostly evens.
Oh my God! Get him! Someone get him! Given that this is your first time doing one of these, Graham, I would like to bestow upon you the dread of having to roll the executioner's dice if the time comes.
Sure.
Yeah, everyone cool with that?
That's cool.
Great.
Yeah.
Perfect. On we go.
All
Okay.
right.
Well, very little reason to sit around waiting for the axe to fall.
Other than the alcohol.
Yeah, Kirk versus Spock fight music.
It's a little thing called showmanship, Mick.
It's the gladiatorial arena for us tonight. Here we go.
All right, round one. We
Fight!
have the Fantasy Flight Games Warhammer 40k RPGs.
Yeah.
This is the full set. We could pick and choose between them, as we didn't. And they are up against the prequel to Shadowrun, Earth Dawn.
Yeah.
A fantasy game which tries to figure out, why does all this fantasy stuff work the way it does? So, Graham, do you want to start off our debating?
Go on, then. So, Rogue Trader, Dark Heresy, and Death Watch are the ones that are here. Now, interestingly, I love the rich history of 40k, much like I love the rich history of the old world of Warhammer. It's absolutely brilliant, and actually, as you play, especially in Rogue Trader, you see it in a very different light to when you see it in the war games. Because in the war games, you're sitting there and you're kind of omniscient to a degree. You've read your codex, you know all the background, you've read your opponent's codex. When you're actually playing in Rogue Trader, you know a tiny slice about what's going on, and it has a tendency to explore alien worlds, themes, histories, that kind of thing, that don't turn up in any of the codexes. So it is that thing of going, oh, it's an alien. What kind of alien is it? I don't know. It's green. It's flying. It's psychic? Why are we all running away from it? Oh, it's splitting in two. Is that good? Is that bad? Oh, now it's undead. So Rogue Trader was great for that kind of thing. You really got this feeling of being out on the edge of stuff and not knowing what was going on. Dark Heresy I only played a little of, but it's very nice to be able to kick down the door and go in and bust some cultists, or, subtly sneak around and that kind of thing. Deathwatch didn't play any of it all, but I have heard good things about being sort of enormous Terminator armoured Space Marines wandering around the place. And I have to admit, I have a very limited experience with Earth Dawn. But, having said all those nice things about the 40k games, the bloody rules drove me nuts. They really did. They were really difficult, because you've got the percentile dice for stuff, and you're like, that's fine, I rolled the percentile dice. And it's like every 10 under is a success, and you're like, okay, that's unwieldy, but I can live with it. And then you're like, also, have a look at all of these modifiers. And I'm like, what now? Oh, these modifiers. So are they at long range? Are they at short range? Did you run? Are they dodging? Have they got an Eldar Hollow Weave, and I'm like, okay. But it isn't, don't forget, these are opposed rolls if you're shooting and they're dodging, so they've also got to do all their different modifiers in their thing as well. And I'm like, okay. And then as a GM, you look at like a meaty adversary, like a lictor, and you're like, the lictor's character sheet's 2 pages long. The lictor's character sheet's 2 pages long, and there's no picture of the lictor. It's all numbers. And it's all stuff like uncanny, amazing, reptilian dodge. And you're like, I don't know what that is. And you're like, oh, like uncanny dodge. Okay. But also twice as much instead of that much. What? And it's just so complicated. As RPGs, they, like, once anything happens that isn't, I stand here and use this skill in isolation, it becomes mind-bogglingly complicated. And if your fellow players or your GM are not terribly strong on the rules, they'll just forget stuff. And it is like the opposite of a pleasant, easy experience. So, like, I love the background of those games, but the actual rule set can go and die on fire in a bin. And I would put it on fire in a bin and hope it died, except I have no idea how many percentile points I need to take off that, and whether or not it's able to get away from it using uncanny, reptilian, unholy, amazing dodge.
Also, those books are quite glossy and high production values, so they probably emit all kinds of weird chemicals when you set them on fire that aren't good for you.
They probably do. So that I think, in summation, is my 5 minutes with the 40k games versus Earthdawn. You'll notice I haven't mentioned Earthdawn a lot. I don't know an awful lot about Earthdawn, but I have strong feelings about the other games.
Fair enough.
Oh, yeah.
So...
I also don't know much about Earthdawn, but I don't know, is it kind of a fan theory or if it's official? Does anybody know the answer to this? Whether it's like the prequel to Shadowrun?
It's completely confirmed in every respect.
All right,
absolutely, 100%.
Are the rules anything like early Shadowrun?
Not even slightly.
Okay, well that's good because
this is only a crazy rule set.
That would not really give it much of a bonus over the 40k role-playing games rule sets then. Like, we were waiting for so very long, so many years for Warhammer 40,000 to be made into role-playing games. Well, yeah, in terms of all the background and stuff, there's absolutely great stuff there, but yeah, my goodness, having to play them, I find to be a slog, and I'm glad that somebody else said it, because I was starting to wonder, like, am I just kind of thick or something like that, or is it that fate has kind of changed my brainwaves from normal ones to weird ones?
I think you just enjoy fun, Shane. That's the trick.
Sorry, Graham, what was that?
I said I think you might just enjoy fun. That could be the problem.
Weirdo.
Yeah, I wish I knew more about Earthdawn, actually. It never really seemed to get a lot of traction in the Irish gaming scene that I was familiar with back in its day. So I didn't get exposure to it. But it does sound like good fun stuff, and a really interesting take on fantasy things. Fantasy things being something that I have very little interest in.
Mick?
Right. I have all 3 of these core books, Rogue Trader, Dark Heresy, and Deathwatch, on my shelf. I even added great... Yeah?
You can talk about, like, Black Crusade and Only War if you really want to.
Are they not core? I thought they were like...
I stopped buying core books in this line for a reason.
Oh, wow. I wonder why that is.
The knives are coming out.
I ran out of...
the knives out
red
talent.
ribbon. So I put red ribbon bookmarks in all of them, expecting that I'd be looking up the rules, it'd be great. And I'd be sitting there being very happy with myself and all my 40k. I love the 40k setting. I'm listening to a guy on YouTube called A Border Prince. If you have any interest in listening to a very thickly sort of accented Englishman just rolling through the long history of the 40k universe, then this is the guy to go to. A Border Prince. I think I'm on hour 7 of the Sabbath Worlds Crusade alone. It's wonderful stuff. No kidding. It's brilliant. It sends me to sleep at night. It's fantastic. I have the best dreams. Yeah, the setting, 40k setting, great. You can attach almost anything to it, and almost everybody has. And FFG, they let this one get right out from under them. They published a bunch of big, thick books. Actually, this started with Black Library, if I recall correctly. So it had a change of developers sort of on somewhere down the line. And I don't know that actually shows. I think its flaws are fatal and baked in at the beginning. It has this wild mismatch between the relative strengths of certain careers in the system. I mean, Graham has said an awful lot about what's wrong with it. Earth Dawn is indeed the forerunner for Shadowrun, which is one of my favourites. It's been through. It's one of those second or third tier RPGs or systems that tends to get moved around a lot, starting with FASA and then it went to Mongoose and all other places. So it tends to suffer from a lot of new management comes in and they'll fix it and they'll sort it out and it'll be people will finally see why they should be playing this instead of something else. It's always going to be a bit of a footnote in terms of RPGs, but it is this weird fantasy underpinning for the even weirder fantasy cyberpunk that is Shadowrun. It has you'd have to go look at the wiki page to get a handle on the mechanics. It has this kind of mixed dice method of trying to get sort of consistent skill result levels throughout. It's very hard to explain, but there's a table. That's one of the things it's quite good at actually, is explaining its weird rules. It's a pretty well laid out book. And it has a whole bunch of cool races, like you can play Rockmen and Lizardmen and all this sort of stuff in a very not D&D fantasy world. You're basically between apocalypses. And its closest touchstone is definitely Burning Sun. Is that the D&D?
Dark Sun?
Dark Sun. It's definitely a companion piece to Dark Sun that they come around at the same time. It's one of these are both. So one of these is big, rich history that both come into popularity roughly the same time. Shadowrun probably had its day. 40k continues. I've said as much as I'll say for now. I'm waiting for the vote.
Okay.
Yeah, actually, sorry, just to jump in there. I don't believe that I didn't clarify there that I really like the 40k setting, because I guess I assumed it goes without saying. Like, has anybody ever met anybody who doesn't love the 40k setting?
I've met people online who just
I know one guy
don't like the grimdark.
I know one guy who just cannot get his head around the idea that technology would be lost and that they'd resort to sort of saying prayers and things. It completely boils his noodle and he'll have no truck with it. So they are out there.
He doesn't work in tech support, I'm guessing.
Something like that, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so Scarr.
I have had wonderful experiences with the first three. Well, I've had memorable experiences with the first three games. I was part of a long-running Death Watch game while I was in Galway, where we were killing just ridiculous amounts of things. And from the very start, part of that game is still going on, and now they are just sort of fighting Necron armies because they can. There was, but yes, got a lot of mileage out of Dark Heresy, a lot of cool stuff come out of Rogue Trader campaigns, and yeah, I've often forgiven the FFG 40k games for their system being appropriately bad for the setting. And it's just like, it is a horrible world where you're almost definitely going to fail, and you have to, exploit everything you can just to get anywhere. So while it's thematically appropriate, that doesn't necessarily make it easier to run. But I've generally found that it's worked for me. Earth Dawn is yet another one of those white whale games that's always been on the horizon, tempting me, but I've never actually been able to catch up and take a real meaty look at it. It is interesting, the idea of examining the underpinnings of what we just sort of take for granted in a D&D clone. It is worth thinking, but has it grabbed me? Is it a thing like I have to play this? It's always been interesting. It's always been something I think I'd really enjoy reading it. I'm not as certain whether I enjoy playing it, but that's only one criteria. There are many ways to value an RPG.
No.
No, there aren't.
No.
Okay.
No, you played them. You play role-playing games. That's the name.
You're thinking of role-playing books.
We've started a different fight. Will we move to the vote then? Because
All right,
we're 20 minutes in. I've typed mine in. I'm ready to hit enter.
All right. 1, 2, 3.
Interesting.
Oh, that appears to be a tie. So we have two.
Okay, that's an. Oh, I see. That's an interpretive pronunciation of.
Interpretive pronunciations that we
It's like
cannot
Warfare.
read out on air. Thanks.
Okay, I've got my D8 here. On a 1 to 4, it's going to go for Fantasy Flight Games. On a 5 or more, it will go for Earthdawn.
Okay.
Radio. Go for it.
2, so unfortunately, it is Fantasy Flight Games.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's
On
good
the
that
dice.
there's Warhammer 40,000 role-playing games. Like, it's a step forward in humanity's history.
It's good that they exist. It's bad that they're those ones. And there's another one later on in the bracket. We could just vote for that.
That was there.
Well,
No
nice
spoilers.
vote this time. So
Okay,
anyway,
so that's it. Fantasy Flight's efforts at 40k and all of its different iterations takes it for the first round. Moving
And that is
very swiftly on because wow,
All
we
right.
burned down some time on that one.
yeah. It's almost like we have opinions on 40k.
What's next?
Round 2 will be Earth Dawn's prequel or sequel. It will be Shadowrun.
Yes!
And it will be up against the modern newcomer, the king of investigative RPGs, Gumshoe.
Yes!
And its many, many iterations. Okay, who wants to kick off this one? Who is screaming yes in the background there? Would they like to start
That's me.
this?
I'm just being enthusiastic. Although I like these things. Okay, right. I seem to have started. Right, Shadowrun was the first role-playing game that I ever played, that I ever bought and ran as a GM. I love it. It's got that sort of Warhammer 40,000-y thing of taking fantasy and shoving it into a setting where it doesn't necessarily belong, and yet having developed its entire own field that is unique and separate from its origins. I find it really evocative. I love a lot of the ideas. It really triggered my imagination back in my late teens, early 20s of, having technological defenses against magic, lining the walls of your skyscraper with a bacteria algae kind of a thing to stop people from astrally projecting through it because they can't go through life forms. All of that kind of stuff. I loved all of that. It's got colossal problems rules wise though. I don't know what the later editions are like, but God, back in second and third ed, it was a nightmare to put together those dice pools of fistfuls of d6s. And then of course there's all the usual problems of this multi-directional attack on something, of having the cyber decker trying to hack through the matrix and the magicians trying to do their magic thing in astral space, and then the fighters doing their physical combat stuff, and it all ends up feeling quite disjointed and like nobody's really helping anybody. Everybody's just waiting their turn to play their mini game. But great setting, and yeah, loads of stuff that can be done with it. And Gumshoe, I've played a fair bit of, I guess, Trail of Cthulhu and Mutant City Blues, and I think maybe one of their other things. It's a really good idea. This has probably been gone over before, so we'll make it terse. You've got your action skills, which you spend a certain number of points and roll a d6, so there's whether you'll succeed or fail, and you can kind of guarantee success by spending loads of points, but it means that you don't end up taking up everybody's time by always being the best guy at jumping over cars. And then investigative skills, where if you say, I would like to use my art history skill on that painting, then you automatically get any clues relating to that are coming out of it, because you're assumed to just be good at that. And I think that is the big lesson that comes from it, is like, in an investigative game, don't not give the clues. If the players still have to use their brains to think, like, I want to investigate this in this particular way, but if they do that, then don't leave it down to bad luck on the dice to ruin the scenario and everybody's fun. I think that was the clever thing that Gumshoe did. I think different people have different levels of fun with that type of system, with the sort of points and d6. But some of the settings that have come out for it are great. Like, Mutant City Blues was a lot of fun, and the Trail of Cthulhu stuff is really well produced and a nice, slightly different spin on Cthulhu just by sort of setting it 10 years further into the future in the 1930s instead of the 20s. I played some great games in that, and some really nice unusual types of scenarios that have come out for it as well. There was one, Soldiers of Pen and Ink, which is all about propaganda during the Spanish Civil War, that's not something I've ever seen before. That was it.
Okay. I guess I'll go next, unless everyone. Okay, so I've always found Shadowrun interesting as an experiment. It's always this nice vodka setting. It's worked through its own thoughts on different things. It's done a really good job of mashing up two weird genres into something unique. But from everything I've heard of it, like, the system has always been its weakness, in that it's trying to both thread the needle of being a sensible cyberpunk system, with a whole bunch of magical stuff involved. It's never sounded like it's quite gelled together. And it has the advantage of having cross genres. Like, if I want to play a Shadowrun game, I can just turn on Steam and bring up Shadowrun Hong Kong or whatever, and get it fixed that way. It's a lot. Whereas to compare this with, actually, we're not supposed to be comparing right now. Anyway, the Gumshoe system.
I'm going to reach to this microphone and strike. Well, why don't you just go play Diablo to get your D&D fix, you goddamn Philistine?
Yeah, like, playing a Star Wars role-playing game is different to watching a Star Wars film.
God damn it. Sorry, please continue.
Okay, I'll continue to Philistine. Gumshoe is a game I have not yet gotten a chance to play, but everything I've seen about it just primes me to want to try it, to try to get into this investigative mindset, try different things, to be gambling skill points around to get things done. It all really seems, it's all very compelling, it's all very getting me hankering to try the game, so that's my take on Gumshoe, is just like, I want to get deep in its guts. Well, that's not biased at all, anyway. Graham.
The Dracula Dossier, that was Gumshoe.
It is,
yes.
Dracula Dossier and Trail of Cthulhu are both Gumshoe. I really like Gumshoe. I like the idea that as an investigative game, it doesn't gatekeeper clues. So one of the problems you can have with games in other systems, where you're like, you need to make some sort of roll to get this clue. If everyone fails the roll, you don't get the clue, you don't get on to the next scene. So it creates a bottleneck where you know where to go.
Let's crumple up the scenario and throw it over your shoulder. Like, well, you seem to be in an empty room.
There are other ways you can fix that, but Gumshoe basically builds into its DNA the fact that there's going to be a seamless investigative trail. Now, depending on how good your skills are and your own innovation, you may get better clues, but there'll always be something to lead you from one scene to the next. I think that's very powerful. I also like the idea of abilities that get worse as you use them, You can fight all day. Well, no, you can't. You'll get tired, After you've beaten up 17 cultists, the 18th cultist might find it a little bit easier to subdue you. So I think structurally there's an awful lot that's very good there, and there's lots of very good games that have come out using that system. So as I said, Trail of Cthulhu, Cthulhu Apocalypse, the Dracula Dossier, which I consider to be pretty much perfect as a product. Shadowrun, I like the style. I like the cyberpunk stuff interspersed with magic. It's difficult to argue with, Although I guess if you're Shane, you can just go and watch Bright, and then you don't need to play the game at all.
Damn! I've been called out hard.
I'm remembering the thing you said 2 minutes ago and repeating it. That's what's happening. I'm holding you to account. If you don't like that, maybe you shouldn't go on the internet and record your opinions. I'm just putting that out there. So it's a nice idea. It's a kind of a cool and slick idiom, but I'm not as big a fan of that particular rule set or of that particular idiom. I think cross-genre, you run the risk of kind of diluting your brand a little bit and not being sure exactly what you're saying. Anyway, that's my 2 cents for those two.
See, I told you getting him on would be a good idea. Shadowrun, I ran this when I was a teenager for preteens. Off the second edition rulebook, I've discovered that myself and Evil Robot Shane are spiritual brothers in arms. Gumshoe, I haven't had the pleasure. I understand it's very good, and it has innovated successfully on the subject of running investigations in RPGs, which is sometimes tricky. Shadowrun made up a whole bunch of things it had to innovate on because absolutely no one else even thought to do it. Good for them. It's so yeah. We shall see how the vote goes.
All right.
So Scarr, you tell us when to go.
1,
No, I'm
2.
not ready yet. I can't decide.
Wait, do we go on? We go on 3 or after 3?
On 3.
Okay.
Okay.
1,
Okay.
2, 3.
Ha.
I knew
Okay.
it.
The D8 is deciding. We'll decide. So
We're
1
split
to 4,
again.
1 to 4 Shadowrun, 5 to 8 Gumshoe.
Okay.
5
The
to
problem
Gumshoe.
I have is that Gumshoe is just not much fun as a system. It makes for great games, but just playing that rule system,
It's
it's
too
just not
late
much
now.
fun.
So
Yeah.
I believe the dice has spoken.
We appreciate your opinion, Evil Robot Shane, and we give it the weight that it deserves.
Yay!
But the dice,
Okay.
but ironically, the dice say no.
Mr. Dice has said no, so Gumshoe goes through, and Shadowrun, poor sweet Shadowrun, too confused to put on its own shoes. Right, next round.
The next round will be the Sean Breaks Out in Hives round as D&D 5th Ed.
Yes.
The current capitalist darling is up against an interesting comeback kid. It's the other role-playing game, Torg, and its
Yes.
attempt to do rifts better, I guess.
right.
Okay.
Nominate
How the hell
someone to
did
kick us
this
off.
happen?
Bracket fight. On
Nick,
2020.
you go first. You're nominated.
D&D 5th Ed, everyone's played it. Torg, I've heard of it. Moving swiftly on, I'll wait for the vote.
Okay. Graham.
I've never played Torg. The only thing I know that you can make a character called the Torg's Glass Ninja, where basically do 1,000,000 points of damage, but if someone looks at you funny, you die. I, however, do know people who've played a single Torg role-playing game for the best part of like a decade, so clearly there's something to it. I really like 5th Ed, though. I think it has taken a lot of the problems away from 3rd and 4th Ed of D&D. I think it is very much a spiritual successor to 2nd Ed, which I really liked. I think you do need to break out from the, as I mentioned earlier on, in the previous episode, when we were talking about trust, or the next episode, depending on how these are aired, that I think you do need the scope to break out a little bit from the rigid confines of the structure for it. But I think overall, it is a better product and a better game than 4th Ed or 3rd Ed, or probably even 2nd Ed, because it's gotten rid of a lot of the crazy edge cases of 2nd Ed. So it's a longer-winded way of saying the thing that Mick said.
Yeah, go ahead.
I've never played 5th edition D&D. I've never seen it. And
We found the one.
yeah, and I don't know anything about Torg. But people do speak highly and at great length and of very little else other than 5th edition D&D, and I'm getting a bit sick of hearing about it, frankly. Yep.
Okay.
It should be noted it had some very easy, had a very easy previous round where it just had to beat off the burning wheel or beat out the burning wheel. Yeah, that's better. I should say that instead.
I think I've seen that movie.
So beat out the burning wheel in its opening round, and now it takes on Torg, a game almost nobody has heard of. Right, are we ready to vote on this? Sorry, of course.
I'm allowed to have opinions.
Our resident Torg expert. Go on.
I haven't given up my right to have opinions just because I said something weird about Shadowrun.
Could we interest you in a movie instead of giving your opinions?
They have had the wisdom of not releasing a D&D 5th Ed movie. Although apparently it's still somewhere in development hell, somewhere in Hollywood. But Hollywood's going to fall over and die by the end of the year, so we're fine. We've been spared.
They're waiting for a Wayland's brother to come available before they can shoot it.
I don't think an awful lot has to be said about D&D 5th Ed. It is a very...
Why do people keep saying a lot about it then?
Yes, it's a very workable system. There's a lot to like about it. There's plenty of reasons to dislike it if you want to dislike it. But for the task of running D&D, which is what a lot of people want to do, it performs admirably. Torg is... I don't know. Torg's... It's weird, because I'm sure it's a really good system, but it's never had quite the same brand of absolute post-apocalyptic crazy that I come to expect from the likes of Rifts. The impression I got is that it's a lot more about keeping, like, playing with a different set of toys every week, as opposed to mixing up all your toys together. And I'm a bit more of the latter in my taste in weird crossover fiction.
It's like this week we're in Cowboy World.
Yeah. Whereas rather I would like to play in Samurai Cowboy Robot Vegetable Men World. Thank you very much.
That's Star Wars.
I mean,
You've just described Star Wars.
Yeah, that's fair. Well,
you're not cool enough to play Torg.
We got one of the FHE Star Wars through last time. Anyway, but yes, those are my opinions. They're bad, as everyone knows. And I think now we're going to go to a vote.
All right. Well,
all right.
I've got mine typed in, so...
All right, everyone ready? Go?
Yep.
1, 2, 3. Okay, we have... Okay, yeah, we've got...
Do you want to read that into
no
the
need for
record?
dice this time. 5th Ed has, shockingly enough, taken the field yet again. And,
with an abstention from Evil Robot Shane. And I voted for Torg, everybody, so, just keep that fire burning.
Legend, yes.
We're just too normal not to vote for Torg.
I feel like I can hear a howl of anguish coming from somewhere in the suburbs.
We're 40 minutes in. No, you can't.
Okay, moving on. 5e takes it. No dice required.
Okay.
Let's rock and roll.
All right.
Yeah, this is where we get vicious.
Next up is the Cortex RPGs.
Yes.
Cortex and Cortex Plus, which have been primarily used for a variety of tie-in
TV shows, Supernatural, Firefly, and Buffy. I think Buffy used it. So
no,
yes.
I think Buffy was before Cortex came out, but Battlestar Galactica, Firefly, and Serenity RPGs, because of course they're separate. And then it is up against the comedy classic Paranoia.
Yes.
The tale of Friendly Computer and all of the wonderful friends who are responsible for their own executions.
I think you need to go first on this one, Scarr.
Oh, do I? Well...
I think so, I can't remember. We're on the 4th, yeah. Let's leave you open. Off you go.
I'm trying to formulate a complex opinion on the Cortex.
Over to you, Graham.
I have a much less complex opinion. I haven't played any of the Cortex RPGs, so I have no opinion on them whatsoever. I've never played Paranoia, but I have the funny feeling that the kind of memes surrounding it, where people say "Hail Computer" and bits and pieces like that, and do the salute, is probably actually a lot more fun than having to play a role-playing game where that's the central conceit for 3 hours. It's one of those things. It's like the B-sharps. We need a joke that's funny at first, but becomes less entertaining each time you hear it. That is my extremely facile, off-the-cuff, and unfair impression of those two systems that I have never had the good fortune to play.
Scarr, do you want to seize back control?
Yeah, sure. I know everything. I have never actually. No, I have actually run the Firefly RPG once at a Limerick convention, and it seemed perfectly suitable then. Although perhaps now thinking back on it, it's possible that I just completely misread the rules or had confusing editions of Cortex with Cortex Plus. So I would not consider myself to be an expert in the Cortex system. But it certainly seems to have worked for a lot of different RPGs. So it's clearly got something for getting to the television mindset, for rolling dice based on drama as opposed to, hard and fast laws of physics rules. So it's got something there. Paranoia, I can sort of go back and forth on this one. I feel like most of the time I'm in a very similar mindset to Graham on this, in that I wouldn't want to play Paranoia with Paranoia fans, but I can certainly see myself enjoying it. Is it right to condemn a RPG that maybe you would run but you wouldn't play? I feel
only if you do it quickly.
I feel like that's how I would look at Paranoia. Other Shay?
Right. I've only barely touched on actually either of these games, like Cortex at a convention, I think, and so, I mean, you can't get very deep into the understanding of a rule set from a one-shot where, everybody's kind of being thrown into it at the deep end and you just need to get moving because you're on a time budget. But so I didn't pick up on if it has within it got stuff to kind of emulate the progression and emphasis of television series as opposed to just being, I mean, it's a bit like Savage Worlds is what it felt like to me, with different types of dice, which is a good thing. I do like getting the old D12s out occasionally, or every day. I don't know, maybe it's just the mood I'm in right this minute, but playing in any of those settings is not really grabbing my imagination, unfortunately. Like the big stories have kind of been told within them. Paranoia I've also got very little experience with, and I would be trepidatious about maybe the fans, no offense to its fans, because obviously they're the reason that it exists still, but definitely if I was given the opportunity, if both were on the schedule for convention, or if a GM was saying I'm going to run Battlestar Galactica would probably get me, but I'm going to run like a Firefly game or a Paranoia game, I think I'd want to go for Paranoia.
Savage?
Man, Cortex won the Origins Award in 2005 as Gamers' Choice Best Role-Playing Game of the Year, presumably because everyone was watching TV that year. It has a perfectly normal system based on a whole bunch of points buy and target numbers and other things. Paranoia, I don't remember anything about the systems used to run it, but I do remember that if you don't fill out your requisition form correctly, you are going to be on clone number 2 very quickly. And you better be sure that no one discovers your secret affiliation to a mutant or some other political society. Because, all these other guys around you at the table are probably all informing on you to computer. No, they're all hoping you don't discover their mutations and things like that as well. It's a wonderfully silly system. It's only the thing that can only sort of really be born out of the RPG space, and the other thing is for licensing Flavor of the Month TV shows too. Can we go to a vote?
All right. Ready on the butter? Are we all ready?
Hold on. Better not do that in all caps. All right.
1, 2, 3. Well, it is a sweep not a sweep. I remain the dissenter. But Paranoia has taken the lead pretty strongly this one.
Quite right, my friend computer.
Thinking about it, that is the big advantage of Paranoia, is that it is very much something of that gaming has created itself, as opposed to having been given it. I
changed my vote at the last second. I was swayed by Mick's poetical rendition there.
Yes!
Of a liminal emergent spottage. A liminal emergent space that created, out of gaming and gamers, instead of some sort of hackneyed, trite Flavor of the Month.
Yeah, he's kind of made me hate television, actually.
The hell with you, Origins Awards. We know what's right and good. Right, let's move on.
That's the whole point.
It was 2005.
Okay.
15 years ago. 15
They knew
years
nothing.
ago.
They knew nothing of what was coming.
15 years ago.
Which system probably better describes the world today?
Oh, damn.
I keep telling you it's 40k.
All right.
All right. So, next up, round 5. We have the good old, generic old GURPS.
Yes.
And it is up against the 1st, 2nd, and 4th editions of Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay.
Yes.
So I have a little confession to make. I actually screwed up the previous graphics for this and had the wrong Wolfrup in. Do you want to just maybe very, very, very... Can someone very briefly explain why 1, 2, and 4 are one thing and 3rd ed is another thing? Really briefly.
Fantasy Fight Games. That's pretty much the...
okay. Oh, good. Now that's done.
Third edition
Right.
was kind of a version of the Fantasy Flight Games Star Wars engine, whereas 1st, 2nd, and 4th edition are kind of like the Warhammer 40,000 role-playing games.
One had custom dice, is that it?
Yeah, it was custom dice and lots of custom cards.
Right.
And I think there were like tokens for tracking your cooldowns and your abilities.
Hold your powder. I believe it's time for Graham to take to the speaker's plate.
Behold my ill thought out opinions. So which fantasy battle one is it that we're talking about? Third or
First, second, and fourth.
Fantasy roleplay.
it's the same thing. So is it first, second, and fourth?
The normal
or
ones.
third?
Yes.
Yes,
normal ones.
yes, it is
This
first,
is what
second,
we're
and
talking
fourth
about,
this time.
But we're explaining 3rd ed because 3rd ed is the one that needs explaining, apparently.
Well, you're not explaining it very well because I don't know what game we're talking about.
Okay.
I mean, I do now, but so first, second, and third. One of the really nice things about Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, we'll leave the battle to one side, is that well, this whole thing is the battle, I suppose. Is that you had the option of making your characters randomly. And you didn't have to, but most people did. So you ended up with a random background and profession and all this sort of thing. And it gave a huge amount of character to your players, you know? That you had these sort of semi-random decisions. And they became very much unique and very badly made, in many cases, characters. And there's this lovely thing of you started with a lowly profession, and you could then move on to another profession. But to do so, you needed to get all the trappings of your current profession and of the profession you wanted to move into. You know, so if you were a rat catcher, and there were only certain things there was only a limited amount of social mobility, so you could maybe go from rat catcher into bounty hunter, but you couldn't go into, nobleman or Reichsguard, but maybe you could sort of bootstrap your way there over time. And that was great. It was very enjoyable. It made very, very bad, but very lovely characters, You had people who ended up being a knight, but because they'd started off as a beggar, they only had like 2 wounds and stuff like this. There was a lot of fun to that. However, having said that, GURPS is also pretty good in and of itself. It's quite a simple system. It's difficult to make characters in, and you do have that problem of, depending on what way you make the character, you can have 2 people who spend points in different ways, and one person ends up with the better character, despite starting off with the same number of points, and buying effectively the same skills. It's got kind of a complicated character generation system. But once you've got the character up and going, the game itself is very versatile, and it flows quite nicely. It's kind of the opposite of the 40k thing I was talking about earlier on. And although the Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay doesn't have quite so many modifiers as its 40k counterparts, it's still in and of itself a relatively complicated game. So again, I really like its charm and its background. There were some cracking supplements that were created for it. Drachenfels, Death on the Reich, The Enemy Within, all this sort of thing. Great writing. But again, I find the rule system is actually the bit of the game I like the least. And as we did mention earlier on, role-playing games are for playing. They're not just for reading, That's kind of my 2 cents on those.
Will I go next, I guess?
You throw the meat into the arena and you decide which lion jumps in it.
Fair enough. I don't know if there's anything major to be said about GURPS. It has very much been it exists game for my entire gaming career.
Didn't you say you used to live in Galway? They love it in Galway.
Not the particular people I like. I'm sure there are loads of gamers in Galway who love GURPS. None of them came to the Galway Gamer RPG meetups.
Oh, right.
They were too busy playing GURPS to come and meet them. They're too busy making characters, 300-point lensmen to fight off 500-point robots or something.
Go on.
But yes, GURPS has always just been there and saying, yeah, we can do things. And it's just like, okay, but it's one of those RPGs where its strength, i.e. that can do everything, is sort of also its weakness, i.e. it doesn't do a whole lot that is particular to it. There's GURPS revels in being able to take on any identity and thus has very little identity of its own outside of adaptations of Stephen Jackson games, and I think there was something about transhuman space, which I never really understood how it's different from Traveller. But that's, again, as we've established, I'm a Philistine, so I would say that.
All I can think there is GURPS, the junior coalition partner of the gaming world.
Oof, oof.
That's just the way you described it there.
But yes, Wolfrup. I have to pretty much agree with Graham here again. Oodles of flavour, flawed system which, makes character creation, character development interesting, but makes the actual run of the game a little bit fiddly. So it's once again this idea of it's as bad as the world it represents, which is you can take it or leave it. So, definitely has lots of strengths, but those come with weaknesses, and it's sort of a peaks and valleys versus a flat line, I think, in this particular case. Mick?
Right. GURPS. I was defending GURPS earlier today as a sort of a good foundation for a lot of things, but I'm thinking now, just thinking about what I said about it, it's got an awful lot of supplements for any sort of flavour of game you want to play, because GURPS is kind of stone soup. Here's the stone, pop it in the water and you make fantastic soups. As long as you add all these other ingredients that we'll give you in a separate book that's entirely details this setting or this type of game. Wolfrup is, it's a classic regional dish filled with chaos and blood in the gutters and drinking and angry dwarves and aloof elves. It's setting and system marry. It has marched down the years, almost unchanged until a flurry of editions recently. It's in a very good place at the moment. The stuff they're doing in reissuing the Death or the Enemy Within campaign just looks fantastic. Disclaimer: I worked on Death of the Reich. Go buy that book. Let's go. Are we ready to go for a vote? Or?
No,
I want to talk.
It's traditional to hear everyone's point of view, Mick?
Sorry?
It's traditional to hear everyone's point of view,
Yeah, it's not, but it is also traditional for me to just mess up and miss someone, so we're sticking to it. Please, dear evil, definitely not a robot, Shane, what do you think?
Yeah, you're damn right. So, like...
On which point?
I kind of came into gaming not entirely via the Warhammer 40,000 setting, but close to it. That was one of my very early introductions. And as discussed before, I think it's a really evocative and self-contained feel of its own to have taken a sort of generic fantasy stuff and plonked it into a future science fiction gobbledygook. And I loved that. So to then see Warhammer of the old world, it just seems a bit watered down in comparison. Like, it just doesn't grab me, and fantasy in itself is a genre that just kind of leaves me cold anyway. I just have never had much interest in the old Warhammer stuff. And GURPS, I mean, I've always maintained that you don't have to play a role-playing game to enjoy it. There are different ways of getting value out of them, including reading them. And
hold on, weren't you the one who
silence?
Don't derail his train of thought.
While GURPS is a pretty bland system and not a lot of fun to play, I think there's just so much value out there in the books. They can be at best a really good potted way of learning a lot about a particular time or setting or something like that. So for example, there's the GURPS Cops book is the one that jumps to my mind immediately. When I was looking into a Mutant City Blues campaign or anything else where you're playing police. Like, this book just tells you everything you need to know about being police in a single book. There are some rules that you can ignore because they're for GURPS specifically. But there's just loads of really useful information, and there are so many books like that, and so many settings that just haven't been covered anywhere else. Like Celtic myth, for example, and one of the oft referenced episodes of the Adventuring Party is about portrayals of Ireland, and GURPS Celtic myth is like probably the one of the main ones of those. And of course the Traveller deck plans and stuff. There's so much material for GURPS that is so useful, broadly speaking, rather than necessarily specifically for playing GURPS. And then, of course, if you're from Galway, you would also love GURPS as a game engine. And it's worth throwing out there, this may have made mention before, but the Legends of North Dublin speak of a multiverse campaign that some people tried to run, where you could build your character using any GURPS book you could get your hands on. And somebody made a character who had the advantage of having a conjoined twin, and the conjoined twin had the disadvantages of being blind, deaf, and mute. So net benefit was 1 extra attack per round and 15 extra character points.
Huh.
That's not a recommendation.
I'm kind of wavering now. I'm feeling a little bit uncertain. We found the site for that game. It's been sealed off by authorities. It's concreted over now. Okay, I think now we're safe to move to a vote.
Okay, so people
Marvelous.
entering their things.
Mm-hmm.
1, 2, 3. Ooh, another tie.
What have I done?
Okay, here's the die of deciding 1, 2, 3, 4, Woofrup, 5 plus GURPS. 5 GURPS it is.
Ah,
Oh my
wow.
word.
GURPS is the greatest roleplay game of all time.
Well, it certainly has the library to justify it.
Yeah,
Right.
It's got the padding. Take a
I
few
think
bullets with the GURPS manuals.
I think its name is just inherently off-putting because the G
Yeah.
stands for generic.
I mean, what were they going to call it? The new Universal Role Playing System, and just call it NERPS. I don't think that would have worked.
You could have just called it the Universal Role-Playing System. It could just have been ERPS.
None of these are nice words.
No, none of these are nice words.
We need to rock on.
Yes. All right. Round 6.
What, there's more?
Yeah.
Wow, brilliant.
We're closing in the end. Don't you worry. Hold fast. See the fight through.
8 in total.
All right.
Three
so
to
round
go.
6 will be the game that has inspired the upcoming Keanu Reeves Not Quite a Movie by CD Projekt Red.
Good Lord, are you
Cyberpunk.
okay?
Yes.
Are you having a stroke? Are you okay?
No, I'm just a little bit Polish now. And it is up against the indie darling of the last few years, the other one of the indie 2-4, Blades in the Dark.
Yes.
And by extension, the Forged the Dark rule set between Band of Blades and Scum and Villainy.
Evil Robot Shane, do you just say yes when you hear the name of an RPG?
Yeah, I love RPGs.
Well, welcome to the party.
Right, you go first.
Who do you want to throw
Shane.
this to? Shane.
Yeah, go first,
Excellent.
Shane, since you're so enthusiastic about everything.
I might be about to hit the wall here because I've kind of been out of the loop a bit in the past few years. I haven't played new stuff. So Blades in the Dark is in the dark to me. And what was the other one? I know I was enthusiastic about it.
Cyberpunk.
Oh, yeah. Bloody hell. I've only actually played a little bit of Cyberpunk because Shadowrun was my thing, and you don't want to overdo it. I could just go into some stupid gaming anecdote. Yeah, what happens if you take Body Zero? You get Dave the Brain, a brain in a jar. He plugs into your dashboard, and he's a netrunner. And I'm out of material.
Okay. That's fine. We've been out of material for years. It's never stopped us yet. Mick,
Who do you want?
would you like
Okay.
to
So, a game where you set out into a dark and dystopian city, ruled by a merciless elite who bear down with all the force of might, authority, law, and thuggery upon an underclass who are ground into the dirt, forced into servitude. You, a plucky band of thieves, dare to usurp the natural order of this horrific dystopian class system. I could be describing either of these games.
I see what you did there.
Yep. It's
I'll await the vote.
Okay. Graham, would you like to go next?
Yeah, as Mick pointed out, they are chiefly the same game, really, so it's very difficult to tell the difference. The rules are quite different, and actually the type of cool that they are is quite different too. So Blades in the Dark is very much kind of a dark Victorian fallen London kind of a feel to it, whereas Cyberpunk has got a, if you'll excuse me saying, cyberpunk kind of feel to it. For me, I prefer the having to go out like these little points of light, these islands with the dark, cruel sea surrounding them, going out and having to kill the demon whales and harvest their blubber in order to create oil and lamps and all this sort of stuff. We played Blades in the Dark. I've forgotten what our gang were called. I think we were called the Apes. Our hideout was called the Ape Hole. One of our guys had a pet ape. Like, it was just, we were very strong thematically, but it was a huge amount of fun. And again, it had that kind of narrative control in a similar way that Gumshoe did, in terms of, furthering the story over necessarily furthering the game part of it. So I was a big fan of the bit of Blades in the Dark. And actually, it changed quite a bit because we played the sort of the beta.
Very early beta release, yeah.
Yeah, so it actually changed as it went on, but it was a tremendous amount of fun. Do you remember what the gang was called, Mick?
It was something like the librarian apes, the Barbary apes, the librarian apes. I'd have to go back and check.
Yeah, I don't remember. I do remember one of us had a pet ape, which was great fun.
We had a lot of fun.
But yeah, no, it was a lot of fun. I mean, I guess it really comes down to which of those two, idioms, which flavour of cool do you prefer?
Okay.
Well, one of them's got a skill called wardrobe and style. That's a flavour of cool.
So me next.
Yep.
The analogy is apt that both of these are sort of in the same genre. The concept of the mission, the heist, or assassination, or other discrete chunk of gameplay where you put yourself up against the man and try to, or rival gangers, and try to carve out your little piece of hope in the dystopia. But, well, first off, I have my natural aversion to semi-modern settings, like Cyberpunk. So the distance that Blades puts into its setting helps me a little bit more. The wacky demon whales and such does help me distance myself from the cruel modernity that is basically Cyberpunk without the cool bits. But also, I've just generally found that Blade's system feeds in better into the mission-based structure, the story of, we did this, and this was the result, and we had to go through this to get to that. Where Cyberpunk, being in a more simulationist mindset, can get somewhat bogged down in the, how many screws are on my robot arm element of the whole thing, and sort of loses the theme of, you're supposed to be, fighting, the capitalist demon, the metaphorical capitalist demon, but, 90% of the supplements are, here's 57 new robot legs. Enjoy. And I just think that Blades is a tighter theme in that case. I've just given my vote away. Is that all four of us?
Yep.
Okay.
So on to the vote it is.
All right. Everyone ready?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. 1, 2, 3. Oh, and Blades takes it 3-1.
Oh.
Wow.
Cyberpunk gets brought down a dark alley and knifed.
Thought that would be closer. Right.
I had a bacon butty the other day that was made entirely of plant protein, and it is 2020. So they called some things right.
Yeah. And still a prescient game. I think that there's perhaps an appetite to see a few plucky indies go up against the man. Ironically, in this case.
You do kind of feel it'll be remembered fondly. There was a light-hearted and optimistic view of the past.
Right. Round 7, is it? Yeah, round 7.
We have D&D, 3rd and 3.5. To complement the easy street that we gave 5th Ed earlier, we have to put D&D 3rd Ed through the ringer, putting it up against Delta Green, the modern Cthulhu spin-off, where instead of going mad, you just start shouting at your wife.
Okay.
So, who would like to start off with this one?
Who's on the rack for first? I think it's possibly is me. Yeah. Delta Green, a game I always confuse with Conspiracy X, which was excellent. D&D 3.5, a game whose my opinion has gone back and forth in this system a lot. I've played a hell of a lot of it, but this is the system where people started to kind of really take class balance and stuff seriously. It's a layer. It's a kind of a shit. This is very long-winded. It's that ash layer in the sediment that shows you where something catastrophic happened. Everything else got sort of flattened down, and we started again. For D&D All Editions, 3.5 is actually kind of like that. It levels out absolutely everything and says, from here we will move forward, never looking back. We'll see how the vote goes.
Other Shane?
Okay. I'm afraid I've never played Delta Green, although I would definitely like to. I like Cthulhu, I like modern, and I like espionage, conspiracy, investigative, special opsy stuff a lot. And I don't like D&D in general, but I've seen people really, really like 3rd edition. Sometimes during during lulls at GaleCon, I'd be sitting at a table with friends of mine who we'd do a D&D pit fighting thing where they just you just roll your 3d6 and create a character and then choose a class and give it feats and then fight the current reigning champion. And this was entirely done from people's memories. There was no books. People just knew all the feats that are available and how all the rules work, and 5-foot squares and flanking. Well, there's no flanking bonuses obviously like that, and all the spells. People knew it so well that it was in their brain DNA. And so, yeah, there's definitely something to it. And my opinion will be given in the vote.
Okay. I'll go next. D&D 3rd Ed was basically my entry into the hobby. I messed around with previous games a bit, but this the first time I ever played was a D&D 3rd Ed game. And through no fault of D&D itself, that was not a great game. But I persevered, started jamming, and moved on from there. So I very much associate 3rd Ed with the past, and that's sort of damning a faint praise. But Delta Green also sort of rings as being an older game to me, but also one that maybe I passed by a little bit more. Again, it has the disadvantage of being in a very modern setting. But it does different things with the Cthulhu mythos, which is sort of my other white whale, that make it somewhat interesting and intriguing. I know this will be a hard one. Nostalgia versus uniqueness and stretching boundaries, but we'll see how it goes. Graham.
I like bits of Delta Green. I like the idea that both sides adapt to modernity. So, for example, the US Army, along with the CIA, were using Summon Deep One, and they would get the Deep Ones to come up out of the sea and then machine gun them on the shores. And after a while, the deep ones went, we're just not going to answer the call anymore. It's literally like, so what happened? Well, the last 18,000 people who went up to see what was going on got machine gunned to death. So we're just not coming. So if you use the spell in Delta Green Summon Deep One, nothing happens. Because they're like, fool us 18,000 times, shame on us. So I like little bits like that, that both sides adapt, you know? 3.5 became a hugely bloated thing, and it was all the splat books. It was the several thousand feats. But one of the interesting things was the system was robust and complicated enough that you got these interesting emergent properties coming out of it, and it set the basis for creating a number of really good games. The adaptation for Star Wars they had using the Third Ed engine was very good. And as a player, it was nice to be able to do the particulate thing where you were putting your specific numbers of skills into places and things like that. Like it was a very detailed rule system, and that's what made it so complicated in the end of the day. But it also gave rise then to the next generation of sort of hybrid games like Saga Edition and Star Wars, which wasn't quite moving into what Fantasy Flight did with them, but was moving away from 3.5. And then it also sort of gave rise to what became 4th Ed, which I don't think was a great engine. But I do think 3.5 laid a lot of good framework for other emergent properties, while also being quite an interesting and robust rule set in a way that wasn't seen before. You know? So that's kind of my 2 cents on those two.
All right. So, that's everyone's opinion. Do you want to put them into the chat and get ready to press enter? All right.
Yep. Count us in.
1, 2, 3. And D&D has swung again.
So Evil Robot Shane has gone against the grain again. Scarr, you're going to have to hand over that dissenter hat.
No, it's fine. He's just copying me because he's the evil robot version of me. We've been over this.
I don't know.
You should all be ashamed of yourselves.
I used to be in the party back in the day, and he's been difficult for years.
So 3.5 takes it. Like another one of these juggernaut meeting a plucky contender with no entry music. There's been a lot of that in this bracket, all of these brackets, but it's just par for the course when you engage in the sort of merciless whittling that is the bracket fight. Which
it's almost like popularity is something that just happens.
Yeah, it's a lot of popular things that aren't good.
Yeah, well, we didn't say whether they were good, we said whether they were greatest. And as we all know, being great and being good has nothing to do with each other.
Well said.
So, final round of this round, and final round of round 2 of the bracket fight will be the Cypher system, including Numenera and that weird game with the hand, versus Warhammer 40k Wrath and Glory, made here in Meath. Well, it's not printed here in Meath, but you know what I mean.
This is weird.
Oh yeah? Yeah. It's, who's it with? To start.
Graham. Let's say Graham.
Yes. Okay.
Grant. Let's have a think. So, what was that? It was the Wrath and Glory 40k, and then
Numenera, essentially.
Numenera.
The only thing people can remember.
I had a conversation with Monty Cook about Numenera, not about Numenera, about an idea that I had for a game, and then like a year later, he was at a con, I met him, like a year later Numenera came out, and it was in many ways very similar to the idea that I had. And I'm not saying that means anything, but it does mean I'm not voting for that.
I'm not the only one who has a vendetta against Monty Cook. Wow.
No, not just you. Again, he was very doped up on cold medicine, and I'm sure lots of people pitch ideas to him at cons. But all I'm saying is, it seems in many ways very similar to the idea that I was discussing with him. But look, I'm sure everyone's got a Monty Cook convention story, and that's neither here nor there. I don't know what the rule set for the new 40k thing is like, but seeing as I waxed lyrical for about, I don't know, what seemed like 15 minutes about how much I liked the 40k lore but didn't like the specific fiddly rule set, I'd be really interested to get my hands on something that kept that lore but had a different, impossible to use fiddly rule set.
Streamlined would be the way a lot of people have described Wrath and Glory.
Okay. I like the way when Shane was like, made right here in Meath. Well, not here. I live here. Like I don't live in a game designing company. That'd be crazy. But near here, I enjoyed that, and I think just for that, I should definitely lean in that direction. That's me. That's my 2 cents.
Okay, biases are obviously not a thing here. Okay, so I'll go next. I technically haven't tried either of these games, so I'm sort of judging them from afar. And once again, it's one of those cases of...
Not very far. One was written in Meath and the other was written in Graham's brain.
Yeah, it's all right. You're allowed to be judge, Judy, and executioner.
But yes, Numenera is sort of the new blood of this, even though it's like 6 years old now or so. Whereas, it's the one with the new ideas, new system, trying a whole bunch of different things. Whereas Wrath and Glory is sort of a rebranding of an old property, but with a fancy new narrative, rule set. I want to say this is probably one of the tougher ones for me, because they're both ones I want to try out. Definitely, sort of picking out, if both were to con, which would I jump to first? And, the answer to that will be given in the vote. Mick?
Ooh, right. Wrath and Glory went from Ulysses Spiel, who really didn't do much with it, except make it
They're too busy making Torg.
Yeah, well, they made it a lot simpler than FFG had managed to do. And it's gone to Cubicle 7 now, who are pumping out content for all sorts of things all the time. It is a great
from Shane's living room, apparently.
Sorry?
From Shane's living room, apparently.
Oh.
Yeah, an epicenter of volcanic eruptions of gaming content. And that's all I can say about it, because I haven't played it. Numenera, I've touched on very briefly. It has an interesting kind of tug-of-war, tri-stat mechanic thing that's, I kind of like it. What I will say is it Monty Cook's Numenera, or did it escape that? It's just Numenera. Does anyone know?
I could not be certain.
Okay.
I know it's going to be... to me, it's always going to be Monty Cook's Numenera by Monty Cook.
I think that's its official title. It's like the Queen, She's got a regular name and then her formal name, so yeah.
It's a lovely post-apoc setting, very dying Earth, but with a more sort of heroic and hopeful feel to it. Like there's a chance to start again, and not everything's running down to zero. Wrath and Glory is, of course, 40k. It's a new. You have to judge it on its mechanics, I think. Based that 40k settings are all the same. Although what I will say is the Wrath and Glory is set in the current 40k, so you've got all sorts of Indominus Crusade and Primaris. Can you play a Primaris for me? That Marine, that's that thing.
I assume so.
Who knows? We'll see in the vote.
It has that tier system for characters, so presumably you can play old Babby Space Marine level up to be equal to the new Hotness Space Marine.
Back in my day, Space Marines were shorter.
So I haven't played either of these systems or heard much about them, so I'm going to approach this from a different angle. I really like this notion that Wrath and Glory comes from the east side of Ireland, but I grew up in County Kildare, which, to those of you not familiar, is basically the same thing as Meath, but slightly different. And by being slightly different, we have a colossal inferiority complex with them. So to hell with Wrath and Glory. I'm going to tip my hand here and say that I'm giving the vote to Graham and his amazing creation, I assume. Well done. Yourself, Graham.
Yep. Well,
so, can we retitle this so you've decided to get sued by Monty Cook?
Graham's Monty Cook's Numenera by Monty Cook and Graham.
It's going to be Monty Cook's court case by Monty Cook against Graham.
Shall we move on to a vote?
Okay. 1, 2, 3.
So that'd be Graham's Monty Cook's Numenera by Monty Cook by Graham. Thank you, Eva Robert Shane, for clearing that up for us. We have 2 for Wrath and Glory, and myself and Eva Robert Shane are quite mad and have gone for Numenera instead. So that is a split requiring the dice.
The die of decision will then render the last 15 minutes of conversation completely moot. 1 to 4, it'll be Wrath and Glory. 5 plus Numenera. 1, Wrath and Glory.
It's always been 1s and 5s. The die is very clear that it wants to put as little effort into making these decisions as possible. But okay, Wrath and Glory has taken it.
So I feel it's worth noting, as I've been keeping track, out of the 8 brackets pairings tonight, 5 have been decided by Mr. Dice. So make of that what you will, folks. Perhaps we should have shot one of our contestants before starting.
I abstained. We should have done more of that.
Okay. Scarr, you want to take us out?
Well, thanks for tuning into us and getting disappointed all over again. We've once again shown ourselves to be Philistines, especially me. And I will now go and watch a terrible Will Smith movie about how racism isn't real if you're black. I don't know what that's about. But join us next time for round 3 of all of this nonsense. But for now, this party's over. Thanks for listening to the Adventure Party. You can find show notes and links to things we've mentioned at www.theadventuringparty.net and on our Facebook page. You can leave comments there, or talk to our Twitter account at AdventurePTY, or you can record a voice message at www.speakpipe.com/theadventureparty. We can also be contacted directly by email at party@theadventuringparty.net. If you'd like to be in touch with the party all the time, come join our Discord server, link in the show notes. The Adventuring Party is released under Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share Alike of version 3 license.